I do like ominous names, something of a more foreboding tone. And Darkness Inside kind of evokes that. I don't know if this is necessarily, again, going for an explicit pirate tone. We'll see in the story as it manifests. The narratives have been beautifully constructed for this album as far as I'm concerned. Just on consultations of the first 7 works. Now we're happening upon the 8th. In our phase of reintroduction with Visions of Atlantis, which has been, over the last couple of weeks, I have been pining a way to do this ever since I firmly decided, yep, we're going to go down this route. I'm glad I made the decision. I didn't used to be like this. Let's introduce ourselves to the remainder of the pieces, right? I thought this is kind of like an one-off type move I would make just on semblance of occasion, and yet European metal demands so much more. And particularly, fun fact, I always want to keep switching Nuclear Blast with Napalm Records for some reason. It's the ends. Napalm, and the fact that they're both explosive by name. Anyway, Napalm Records. There's a lot of groups that have commanded that individual interest, and some exceptions as well from that, but Visions of Atlantis, the minute I first engaged with pirates. And we, as you might recall, if you took the journey with me for our first introductions just a little under a month ago, in one day, in fact, just under, a couple hours, but it was such a fun ride. For whatever albums it was, for the selections, right? The Deep in the Dark and Wanderers, both equally powerful, but Pirates, really something special with this. And again, to set a baseline for anybody, this might be a first approach for on the Visions of Atlantis name. For a number of you, I know it won't be. And maybe for some of you, you've seen other coverage I've offered here in the music side. So you've seen the name in passing in my comments sections. That's how I became aware of them, that everybody was requesting Visions of Atlantis alongside many others in the European realm, which makes sense. Europe, as I've said many times, just offers such a killer metal supply in varied application for sure. And Visions of Atlantis being of Austrian standing, I feel so elite whenever I talk about them being like, I listen to an Austrian group. I feel so sophisticated. But the capabilities offered again on the genre focus for symphonic power, melodic metal delivery, it's just so satisfactory. The vocal presence on Clementine and Mikhail's delivery, and the duality presence too, with the trade-offs employed in the songs, it's just something so special. And the musical construction, deeply enthralling experiences. So to return, right, post where we were after that first phase of 15 consultations, I knew I had to come back and to take it with you. As I've said many times, music is better in company. It's even better. And from whatever angle you approach, right, I welcome everybody. This album is just something really beautiful. And Visions of Atlantis, as I say with any group I consult on this channel, because it's been the common story of music consultations, I feel honored to be recognized in their talents as artists. And to be introduced to them in a grander manner for myself, but to allow an opportunity for you. There's just something so cool about that. So let's broaden out. You've had your first taste. I've given that to you at the very least. Maybe you've welcomed opportunities in the past that we've had a mutual introduction together, but let's broaden out with Darkness Inside. Again, I like the name, and how this fits in the Pirate Vision, we'll see. I've not read this in depth, so fresh eyes. I like the mood already. I'm liking the keyboard dominance here. There's something nostalgic about the construction that gives me like a rewind effect like early childhood. Not in the pirate mood, something separate. The score here though is really cool. Mix of Clementine, of course. The softness works. And the isolated rock tone. Good choice. Erratic step pattern, I like that. Accelerated, even pacing now, mixed with that background keyboard rapidity. So solid. Love it. There's that background operatic linker. You hear it? It's kind of darts in. That's so cool. What an interesting line. Alluring originality of a real contemporary feel. With a possibility. This number is really cool. It amazes me how deep these are. The symphonic presence is suppressed. For a traditionalist hard rock route. I like that choice. It's a departure, but it works. Again, versatility. Bury the doubts that can paralyze. Throwing the way to our paradise. Lighting the darkness inside. Incredibly engaging work. Beautiful refrain choice. I wondered. I think it works. I'm gonna turn to that wire-like cue. It's really interesting. Not what you foresee. Good choice, though. That song has a lot. You know, that's funny. You think you get a sense for a song straightforward on Artifice, right? And you're like, okay, I see its direction. I know where it's going. But then you see it evolve. And it encapsulates this depth. On Origin, you think it's softer, right? There's that keyboard isolation. They've not played around with that, I don't think, yet on the album. At least from what I'm thinking of. Maybe, again, it's been employed in different respects, but it's not been necessarily used in the forefront. And then it immediately throttles into, again, a harder riff. So you get this, as I said, traditionalist hard rock song that's more guitar heavy and bass heavy. It has the facade of it being a rather mainstream tune, mixed with, and I've said this before in many respects, I don't come from a music performer background. I've been like 5 years of class piano. I'm a music connoisseur. That's how I see myself. So some of the more technical aspects of music creation might escape me. So I try my best to find, perhaps, to either learn and maybe pick up from knowledge provided to me in the comment sections, which has happened in the past on occasion, but also to find approximate descriptors. Whatever that wire-like cue is on the keyboard effect, it almost reminded me of, I wanted to say it was like harpsichord, but I think even that's too high of a pitch. Maybe, no, it could have been. This sounds a little more delicate to me. I'd love to hear feedback down below on where exactly that happens to be as an instrument tool, if you happen to know definitively. Or maybe you could also find approximate terms. Either way, the application felt particularly independent. That has not appeared yet on Pirates, or really anything, to my knowledge, on Visions of Atlantis and what we recognized here. Maybe in past tracks I've not publicly consulted or heard for myself, sure, but that could be a possibility, but that felt fresh. So again, there's this widening of, you think, right? Even a song, I'm tempted to say this is the most mainstream of pieces to rock expectation, and yet I'm like, no, it's not, because it still has these independent agents that put it into this contrasting space of such uniqueness. I find it just so interesting. The sophistication, though, the precision on European music, to me, especially what's available in symphonic metal. I love how this is... Symphonic metal presents a wonderful opportunity to be the antidote to the naysayers' complaints. We all know them. Whether if you've been in the metalhead scene for many years, or right, even if you're maybe a passing metal listener, just from time to time, you know the presumption that comes up, right? I've entertained this more than most. I've had my fill of it. I want to be very careful on how I say this, right? I welcome the company of everybody, and I understand maybe some of you are not necessarily metal enthusiasts, but you want to enjoy good art. And I do think Visions of Atlantis has a wide breadth of approach that anybody could find themselves in terms of music favorability. They command that because, again, of just how sophisticated their delivery and execution happens to be. But I'm well aware that if I say I'm a metalhead, right, and I know many of you would agree that automatically you see yourselves in this narrowed scope of, well, that doesn't put me in the company of many other people, especially people we know personally. I know this better than most. I've said many times, I have no connection points to people I know personally, whether it be acquaintances, friends, family. There just isn't cohesion on, oh, I'm a metalhead. And especially on European metal, there's nothing. It's sad. I've said for many years that I find myself in contrast my social surroundings quite often, but a bit adrift. I do look myself, though, favorably. To be very clear about this, though, I prize my audience here. There's so much cohesion on music taste. It's been so great to meet many of you and realize that there's advantages to being an anomaly. Although I would say in your company, I'm not. But certainly in my spaces, we might be adrift, but yet we might be the most fulfilled. The music I listen to just has such a world to it. Symphonic metal, as I was saying, a bit of an antidote to the argument of the presumption that metal is just, it's a thrash, it's screaming, right? I like that. Hey, that's what I gravitate to normally, but again, I keep an open door. But even in music, even in metal, there's a selected basis and preferences. But even in metal, right, there's subjective preference for sure. If you wanted to demonstrate to your, to your unaccepting family member or friend that, metal's just too aggressive or whatever, try symphonic metal. And I've given you, many of you know in terms of what I've consulted on this channel, we have a wide palette of arrangements. So if you want to express numbers with a bit of versatility, even Visions of Atlantis has offered this. If you want to share, again, if you're a naysayer company, wherever that happens to be, here's proof for you that metal's not actually that bad, or at least in this appearance, it's not that aggressive. You might like this. You might make more metalheads out of people than you know, just based on, again, the qualifier of it's a little more versatile than otherwise usually welcomed in conversation. Again, I just admire the dimension that symphonic metal operates from, and not just with the orchestral cue, but just how wide of an application it happens to be, what it permits. This song, as I was saying, on its face, it echoes a mainstream rock number. But you can hear the symphonic cues in the background, right? The keyboard, the rapidity of the notes worked really well too. I love that on the Facing the Lies I Can't Deny line where Clementine launches in. Just beautiful, beautiful transformation there. And then the operatic hint, you kind of hear that intersect on the I think bridge section between the verse or the choruses and the verses. Again, just beautiful, beautiful number. The key choices and the key change on the end. I said before on different occasions, I'm rather mixed on application. It has to be, for me, sometimes you fall in love with the origin of the way a song is illustrated on key choice. You're like, I don't want to leave. But then you end up doing that. So it's kind of like, you're kind of like, I'll make good of it. But in other cases, you see this transition that just makes sense, right? I feel for this number, it works. It feels natural. It's a challenging one sometimes to hear. I've heard debate on this as well in terms of, well, maybe not necessarily on listening, but on application. I was just at an event the other day with people from my church. Our group leader is actually the worship leader, and so he was talking about, I think, organization of certain numbers that he was organizing for the next service or whatever that he was going to play in company with other people of our group. And think they were debating over, do we do this number because it has like a key change on the end, or I want to do this even though the original number doesn't have it. So again, like I said, key changes, I guess, are a bit more open in terms of mixture of opinion. I thought maybe I was one of the people out there who was like, oh, I'm a little less forgiving again when it's not necessarily portrayed well, or maybe when you're left in grievance of, again, wanting to return back to the original key, but it seems I'm not. I think here, though, in application, this worked. It felt natural. Again, there was a momentum portrayed by the song where it felt even, and the finish, too, works. I mean, you get the tracking on that last chorus. Again, we're reaching the conclusion, and it seems to segue naturally, and there's enough of a time for that key disruption to linger that it feels like it earns its reward. The way the song closes out, though, I love how immediate it doesn't draw on, and you could see it taking effect where it maybe just drops on the end, but it cuts off midsection on the verse. On the instrumental side, it reverts back to that piano cue, so it kind of mimics the origin. Great bookend. Love that pattern. Beautiful number. One of my favorites on the album in terms of construction and depth. A lot technically to admire with that piece. As per usual, that is a statement that I would apply generally to Visions of Atlantis, and certainly in strict focus of Pirates in its entirety. That number is quite wonderful. I loved it. I figured I would anyway. Not a surprise. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below as well if you do wish to provide feedback on the number and your angle of approach, right? First impression, listen to them. Familiarized listener, I welcome both companies, as I said earlier. Feel free to chime in down below on your thoughts. We're, of course, going to continue on. I can't wait to see the evolution going on from that point. Next is In My World. I'm curious to see where that one goes in direction. Maybe that's a bit of a broad title, at least in summation. We'll see what happens. But on evolution thus far, this is a killer album. I'm loving its direction, and I've said that with each track we've consulted together, and I love the ride we're on. I love it. I decided to come back to Visions of Atlantis in their entirety. Darkness Inside, just an ever beautiful attribution. Pirates, what a just beautiful collection of work thus far. I can't wait to hear more of it, and even with you and company, it's so much better that way. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.